The Cabinet approved a plan today to allow builders to develop wastewater schemes with a view to boosting housing output in rural towns and villages across the country. The schemes will be later acquired by Uisce Éireann after approval from the Environmental Protection Agency. However, Sinn Féin's Owen O'Brien says there are major questions around the funding of the plan.
Today at Leinster House, developers came before the Oireachtas Housing Committee, telling TDs and senators that more service sites and an easing of planning requirements are required to boost housing output. They assert there's a contradiction at the heart of the current policy.
That contradiction lies in the fact that Ireland needs hundreds of thousands of homes quickly, but also wants these homes built under increasingly stringent rule book, while being delivered at the lowest possible cost, and not in my backyard. These aims are understandable and laudable, but are fundamentally incompatible with each other.
Boosting housing output was discussed at the Cabinet this morning. Ministers backed a plan to allow developers to build wastewater schemes in rural towns and villages, which can later be taken over by the state utility Uisce Éireann following EPA approval.
Uisce Éireann has record amount of funding, but they're never going to be able to get to every village in this country. So being able to facilitate local builders being able to build houses in these villages where people need those homes was absolutely crucial to me when I became Minister for Housing, being a rural TD as well. I'm very passionate about this.
Sinn Féin says it's not opposed to the proposal in principle, but has serious questions about the financing.
We need to know who's going to pay for it, but also if things goes wrong, who's going to take these estates in charge. Right now across the state there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of homeowners who are in limbo because of the mess Fianna Fáil made of this policy before. So if they're going to do it again, they need to get it right.
The Labour Party made a broader point, suggesting the state is now walking away from the provision of critical infrastructure.
They are now raising the white flag, essentially, and saying that we are not, as a state, in a position to provide the critical infrastructure, like water and sewage services, for example, to developers who are working on zoned sites.
Meanwhile, Minister Brown said the government's long overdue National Housing Plan is set to be published, possibly next week, but definitely within a fortnight. Paul Cunningham, RT News, Leinster House.
Well, returning now to those new proposals being brought by Minister for Housing James Brown. Under the plan, builders would be allowed to develop wastewater schemes which would have to be approved by the EPA and then taken over by Uisce Éireann. To discuss this now, Sinn Féin's housing spokesman Owen O'Brien joins us now. Thanks for joining us on 6-1.
Thanks for having me.
Am I right in saying you're not against this proposal?
Well, Sinn Féin always says we will support any measure that leads to an increase in the delivery of good quality, affordable public or private homes. And we've been very critical of government over the years for failure to invest in water and wastewater treatment facilities, which has limited the potential for housing developments in urban and rural areas. I do have a number of concerns with what the Minister has announced today. This policy has been in place before, and when Fianna Fáil last used this policy, they made a real disaster of it. Lots of developers built wastewater treatment plants. They weren't to the standards that were required by Irish Water at the time, and they were never taken in charge. And thousands of homeowners in rural Ireland today are in this limbo where they're responsible for the wastewater treatment.
So if not this proposal, what would your solution be?
If the government is going to do this, they have to learn from the mistakes of the mess they made the last time. The first thing is there needs to be really, really clear guidelines between Uisce Éireann, the Environmental Protection Agency, and developers so that the wastewater infrastructure is gotten right. There needs to be clear oversight, so if somebody doesn't do it right, it's not the homeowner who's left on the hook. But there's also issues around who's going to pay for it. The Minister's press release says today it's the developer. Now, many of these are small builders. These are schemes of 20, 30, 40 units. They're not going to have the money to do this, or if they do, they're going to pass it on to the buyer, and that's going to push up house prices. And then there are the 350 schemes currently in place, thousands of homeowners still in limbo, and government isn't saying anything to fix those. So all I would say to the Minister is publish the detail, because he hasn't got the detail worked out. Engage with the Oireachtas committee, but do not repeat the mistakes that you made the last time because you made a mess of it. But here's a broader point. Even if this works, it's going to deliver a very small number of homes. Where's the ambition from government to increase and accelerate the delivery of social homes for people on council waiting lists and experiencing homelessness, the delivery of affordable homes for working people to rent or buy, and the delivery of private homes from the SME builder developer sector for working people to purchase? There is no ambition in this government. There's no increased funding or targets. This is a small measure. It has the potential to go badly wrong. And if the government works with us and listens to our concerns, they can get it right. But it's not going to be the game changer that the Minister was claiming it is today.
One of the things that jumped out at me at today's committee meeting, the CFO of Glenveagh Homes saying the contradiction lay in the fact that Ireland needs thousands of homes quickly, but also wants the houses to be built under an increasingly stringent rule book, but delivered at the lowest possible price.
Well, we need to be very careful we don't go back to the bad old days of light touch regulation. We have thousands of homes with defective concrete block, with building defects, as well as really low energy ratings. So, in fact, our building regulations today are good. What we need is two things. First of all, on the public housing side, for people waiting for social housing or for working people who want to rent or buy affordably, we need far more ambition from government, dramatic increases in investment, cutting red tape and bureaucracy from the Department of Housing and delivering those homes. And then for people who want to buy private homes, it is far too difficult, particularly for small and medium-sized builder developers, to get sites, to get planning permission, to get good quality finance and to get building. At our committee today, we had a series of SME builder developers who said they are only currently running at 40, 50 to 60% capacity because of these obstacles. And if government was serious, it would deal with the problems that the SME builder developer sector has, the local government and the AHB sector, and let the people who are good at building public and private homes build them. What we've seen far too much from this government is attempts to bring in small amounts of very expensive institutional investment, to have smaller, darker, much more expensive apartments in high-end parts of Dublin and nothing for anybody else. So, I mean, the committee hearing was good today. We had the AHBs, we had the SME sector, we had the PLCs. These are the people who drive housing delivery. It is government who are getting in the way. And the difficulty, from everything I'm hearing about the Minister's proposed new housing plan, it's not going to tackle the fundamental problems holding back social, affordable or private for purchase supply.
Separately, I want to ask you about Taoiseach Simon Harris's remarks that the number of migrants coming into Ireland is too high. Left-wing parties have strongly criticised this. What's Sinn Féin's reaction?
Well, first of all, we all have to be very mindful of the language we choose, but we also need to have an honest and open debate around migration in general and international protection in particular. The problem I have with Simon Harris is he's been in government for 11 years and they've made a complete mess of the international protection system, both for the people who are going through that system.
Would you agree with them that the number of migrants coming in are too high?
Well, for me, the challenge is this. Right, so is Simon Harris saying we should have less workers coming in on the critical skills list for our hospitals, for example, or for our care settings? Is he saying that we should have less students coming in whose fees are propping up our education system? I think really what he's doing is he's trying to displace blame for government's failure to have a proper international protection system, one that is fair, one that is efficient, one that is enforced. He's trying to deflect blame from his own failures. And meanwhile, in communities like mine, for example, in City West, communities aren't being engaged with, they're not being talked to. And the people who are living in international protection accommodation are living in substandard accommodation where small numbers of people are profiteering enormously. We've set out time and time again how you can have an international protection system that is compassionate, that is humane, that allows people who are fleeing war and persecution to apply for protection, where decisions are made in a timely manner, where state accommodation is provided in a cost-effective way. And then when decisions are made, those decisions are enforced. Simon Harris hasn't listened to any of that. And I think he's trying to distract from his own failures in housing, in healthcare, in international protection. But I think people see through it.
All right, Eoin O'Brien, Sinn Féin, thank you for joining us on 6-1.